Hey everyone, I hope everything is going well with you. So in this video, you are going to learn how to work with files with Python. So the way you can interact with any file with Python could be a little bit confusing in the first look, but in this 20 to 25 minutes video, I'm going to ease this process on you and I'm going to throw as much as information as I can to make you understand how to work with files. So we will learn how to read from a file and also how to write some new fresh content on them. So by the end of this video, you will feel enough confident to go ahead and create some Python project that will interact with files. Let's begin. So I'm in a directory that is called Python files, and I happen to have here one Python file and three more text files which their name are alpha, beta and also delta. So I'm going to simulate how we are going to read from those files, and we will start by reading single files and learn the actions that you can take when you read a single file, and I will also show how you can read multiple files at once. So we will go ahead and we will start by creating a new variable, make that to be named as f, and then I'm going to assign it to a built-in function that is called open. Now the open built-in function is designed for interacting with files, and then the first argument here will be the name of the file that you want to interact with. So I will go here and I will write alpha.txt, and then the second argument here will be the level of the permission that you want to set up when we interact with this file. So we have certain options here as the second argument. We have the R that we can pass, which is happen to be read level permission, and we also have W, which is the write, and we also have the A and the X that I'm not going to much explain right now, but I will provide a link where you can take a look for all the level of permissions that are available when you use the open built-in function. So for now, I will pass on the argument here and I will just pass nothing because the default option in that case is R, and we are interested to read this file for now. So I will go here, and the way you can read from a file will be easily by f.read, but if you want to see the actual content of that read file, you have to go ahead and assign it to a new variable, for example, and then I can go down here and then print the content. Now, once you have done to take some several actions with a file, you have to close the interaction with that file. So we will go ahead and use the close method to close our interaction with that file. And so now I will go ahead and execute this Python file, and then you can see that we have some content in our console, so that means that we have done a nice job. Now, this action could be a little bit not the best practice way that you can read from a file, because every time that you read a file, you have to remember to go ahead and also run the f.close, because you probably want to avoid to leaving up open sessions against files, and so it kind of annoys that you always have to go ahead and run this f.close. So the way you can overcome this is by using context managers. Now, I'm not going to go into detail what context manager is, but basically if you go ahead and then you change this entire code here to something like with open, then what this will know to do is automatically closing your file when you finish to take some actions with it. So I'm going to show you how you can use context managers, and you can do that by the built-in word which is called with. So I'm going to take the exact same actions like we did previously, and besides that I'm going to pass in here alpha.txt again, and then by the end of my context manager, which is happen to be this line, I have to specify the name of the variable that is going to be used when I open this file. So like we did previously, this time I'm going to use the as keyword, and then I'm going to give my variable a name, and I can do that by just writing f, okay? And then we will hit a code block sign, which is happen to be colon, and then here I can do anything that I want, like we did previously. So this is how a context manager works. And so I can go here and write here f.read between my print line, and if I go ahead and execute this program, this will be just the same result. But that time I don't have to go ahead and write here f.close, because the context manager takes responsibility to close the interaction with file when it goes out of this with open block. So this is a quite nice achievement, and this is why using context managers are considered as best practice when you work with files. So we will allow ourselves to delete this and then continue from here. Now, an addition tip here that I used to confuse myself as well: when you go out of that block here, this doesn't mean that you don't have access to that f variable anymore. So let me show you this by going ahead here and printing some special properties that the f variable is having right now. So we will go ahead and try to see if that f file is actually closed. So I will execute my program, and I will write here pass for now, so I don't want to see additional prints. And you can see that we receive here true. So we understand from that two important points. The one is that you still can access the f variable outside of your context manager, and the second point is that this file is actually closed and we did not specify the f.close method. So this is quite nice. Now I want to show you some more informative methods and properties. So we will go ahead and print some more lines here. So you can go ahead and access the f.mode, which will turn you back the mode that you have opened this file. And you can also always go ahead and write here f.name, so this will return you the name of the file. And you also for sure have the ability to see the amounts of characters that are inside the file that you read. So let me bring this line of code here back. So we will write here f.read, and then once I have done that, we can go here and then use the len built-in function and then print the length of content. So if I execute that program, then you can see that we got true, we got the mode of the file, we got the name, and also we got the characters that are inside this alpha.txt file. So we are happen to have 198 characters inside that first file. Now the method that we actually read the file could also not considered the best practice as well, because you only have the control for the entire file. Now what happens if you want to read one line at a time because you want to take several actions in between those lines? So what you can do is changing your method that you read the file. So you can go ahead and change this to something like the following. So we have a new method that we did not see yet, which is called readLines. And this special method will be responsible to divide the file that you read into different lines. So what that means? It means that if we open our alpha.txt, then it is going to kind of having an iterable, a list that is going to contain this line and then also this line, and it is going to be applied for each line that is having some content. So if we go ahead and assign this into a new variable that is called lines, and then we go ahead and print this up, then you can see that it is divided into a list where each element is having a sentence that is here in those lines. So you can go ahead and then still read your files by iterating over the lines variable. So you can go here with for line in lines, and then you can go here and then print line, and then you will basically see the same content. But you could pay attention that the result is quite weird. Now this is basically because the print built-in function by default adds a blank line. So you can avoid this by using the end property and make that to be equal to an empty text. Now if I execute this program, then the result is quite great and is quite equal to what we saw, but only we have the control for each of our lines. So consider a situation where you have a file and then you have like thousands of items, and then each item is on a single line. Then it might be a great idea to read that file in this method, okay? So let's minimize the terminal back again and continue from here. So you also can use a method that is called readLine. So let me delete everything from here and then basically remove the s from here and change this variable name to single line, and then let's go ahead and print that up. And then you can see that we got that first line that says to us that is not going to be a cool file. And then if I go ahead and try to execute this method one more time, let's see what it will do. So we will just copy ourselves and then we will change this variable name to single line 2. And then I will go ahead and print that as well. So if I execute that program again, you can see that it showed the second line, which is happened to be the line that starts with anyway. And so what that means, it means that this special method is knowing how to read one line at a time, and so that could be a behavior that you also want to understand. So if you go ahead and then execute the readLine method each time, then it is basically going to jump one line at a time. So this is about the readLine method. And so let's delete everything from here and move on to more useful methods that we have with Python files. So you also have the option to read only certain amount of characters at a time. And what I mean by that, if you remember, this alpha.txt is happen to have almost 200 characters. Now considering a situation that we only want to read 10 characters, when we execute a program, we can also do that as well. So let's go here and set up a new variable that is called reader amount. And we will make that to be equal to 15 or 10 if we want to read 10 characters. And then we can go ahead and basically use again content equals to f.read. But that time I will pass in the reader amount as my argument, and that will be responsible to read only the first 10 characters. So let's go and print the content that time, and then you can see that we got only partly text. But what will happen if I go ahead and then execute the f.read one more time? So let's show that up, okay? And I will duplicate those lines, and I will change this to content too, and I will as well as print the variable content too. And now if I run this, you can see that it read the next 10 characters. So it is a great behavior that you also want to understand. So we kind of understood the different behaviors of f.read, and so if you don't provide any extra information right here, then it is going to read the entire file. But what happens if I go ahead and then read the entire file like this, and then I try to read again 10 characters? And so let's see the behavior of that. Okay, so if you paid attention, nothing has just been appeared in my console, and the reason is that we already have read the file, and so the f.read in the next execution does not have any characters left to read. So if you want to kind of reset back the file object to read that file again, you can use the seek method. And this is looking like the following. So f.seek, and then you can just basically revert your pointer to the zeroed index. So what will happen now if we execute this special method right between those? Then let's see the results. Okay, so you can see that since we set our pointer back to 0, then we were able to see the first 10 characters and then the next 10 characters once again. So this is what seek method does. Okay, so this is also something that you maybe want to know when you interact with files. Alright, so now we want to show up how you can read multiple files at once. So the first thing that you probably want to do here is specifying the directory that is containing some files that you want to read. So in order to achieve this, we are going to import some external library that is called OS. Now I might create a future video about the OS library because it is containing a lot of methods and properties that is great to know. So check my channel out for that, okay? I might be upload something related to that library very soon. So in order to bring the files from a specific directory, we can basically go ahead and use the list_dir method that will bring us the files as a list. So I will go ahead and assign it to a new variable that is called files. And so since the list_dir is a method, you want to go here and then specifying the directory that you want to bring back all the files within it. So we are going to provide the argument value here as our current directory, and we have a built-in property that knows to point to our current directory, and that is the property of cur_dir that is inside that OS library. So what we are basically doing here is listing all files within the directory that my Python file is right on it. So let's go ahead and print what is inside the files. And so the results will be something like the following. As you see, we have a list of all the files. So we can basically go ahead and iterate for a single file, and then if its extension is .txt, then we will apply the same logic where we created the with open block. So let's go ahead and iterate over these files. So it will be for single line in files. Excuse me, this will be single file. And then we will go ahead and condition this up by if single file dot ends with, and then I'm going to write here .txt. So we can be aware that we only want to read files that their extension are .txt. And so here we can go with open, and then as the file that we want to read, we can pass the single file, and then we can go here and use the as if like we did previously, and then right here we can print the entire information from each file. So if I execute our program, then you can see that we got a bunch of information from each of our text files. So this entire text here is from the alpha.txt, as you can see, and we also read the beta.txt, which is basically containing some list of fruits, and then we also got the delta, which is right here. So this will be the best way, in my opinion, for a case that you want to read multiple files at once. Okay, so I know that mostly we focused on how to read from files, but basically when it comes to writing to files, all the methods and properties that I showed you in this video are going to be quite the same when you want to write to a file. So in that situation, I have a case where I set up the level of permission to W, so I will be able to write to a file. But what is special with that W level of permission is that if the file name that you provide right between here is not created or not exist, then it is going to create that for you. So by purpose, I'm going to name our file to something like echo.txt, and then you can see that this file is going to be created, although you don't see that right here in my Python files directory. So let's go ahead and write a basic text to that echo.txt file, and that will be by f.write. So we will just write here something like hello fourth file, something like the following, and then we don't have to close this file since we use the context manager. And so if we execute our program, then you can see that echo.txt has just been appeared, and we see that hello fourth file. Now, one more thing that is quite important to understand here is that if we execute our program again and then we change our sentence a little bit and run our program and see what is inside the echo.txt, then you can see that this text has been overridden by the previous text. So you probably want to avoid this in certain situations, and so you can go ahead and change your permission method to the following letter, and that will be A. So A stands for appending to a new text, and so if we go ahead and execute our program in that case, then we should see 2 times this text, and we might have a problem with that result as well, and that is because we don't see those lines in separated lines. So the way we can do this is by going back to our main file and basically adding here a \n, which is the convention for a new blank line, on our next execution. So on our next execution, the write function is going to jump to a new line at first, and then it is going to write that text. So if we execute this program again, and so we check the result, then you can see that it is on a separated line over here. But we kind of missed this blank space here, so it might be a greater idea to delete this from here and go with f.write and then adding the \n right here. So let's test the results again, and let's actually take back this sentence from here and then execute our program. And so this behavior is right what we expected to see. Now, to demonstrate you a situation where the append level of permission could be useful is by exactly the files that we have read throughout this tutorial. So if you remember, the alpha.txt is having some text here, and then by the end of the file it is having a list of some tips. And so if we want to add one more tip, for example, to a file, now you can compare this to a situation like yours. Maybe you will have a list of items or a list of something else. Then you can basically append a new line, and on my next execution I can basically write something like the following. So let's try to add a 5th tip to that file, and that will be by going here and take some several changes right here. And so the first thing will be to interact with the file that is named alpha.txt, and let me change this to here, and our level of permission will be A still. And so we want to go ahead and write here a blank line at first, and on our next execution we can go ahead with something like this, and so we can add the 5th tip by the following text. So it will be a tip from a Python program. Okay, and if we execute that program, then we should see one more line in our alpha.txt, and that is exactly what is happening. Now you can take this program to a next level and bringing the latest tip number by writing some special code and try to read the last line and then try to bring that number. And so your next tips will be dynamically added by not hard coding the number right here. So this is actually something that could be a nice challenge for you, and you can look up for the solution of this challenge on my website. Okay everyone, so I hope you liked this tutorial. We covered a lot, okay? We covered a lot of points, how we can interact with files, how we can read, write, use some special methods, properties, some extra information that you can bring once you interact with a file. And so I hope that this video has helped you to understand how you can work with files. And if you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button and also consider subscribing. I will see you in my next upload.